I'm going to start with a hard truth. Most businesses don't fail because of product market fit challenges or funding issues. They fail because the founder couldn't build and lead an exceptional team. The people you hire will either multiply your effectiveness or drain your energy. There is no neutral when it comes to talent. When I first started hiring, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was basically throwing job descriptions on freelancer sites and hoping for the best. The results were, let's say, inconsistent, but over time, through trial and error, working with hundreds of brands and poaching a few great people along the way, I've learned what works. Today, I'll break down why your hiring approach is probably costing you more than you think, the 3 phases of hiring as you scale from 6 to 7 to 8 figures, how to hire A players who will transform your business, when to use agencies versus freelancers versus full-time employees, and the interview techniques that reveal who's truly exceptional. Let's get started with the most important principle. Talent beats strategy every time. When I first started my first serious e-commerce business, I was bootstrapping everything. I hired a supply chain manager on Upwork for $30 an hour and constantly told her what to do, how to forecast inventory, when to place orders, which products to prioritize. And I kept wondering why we kept selling out of inventory. Then I took a leap and I hired my first A player, an operations manager with 15 years of experience at major retail brands. She cost well over $120 an hour, 4 times what I was paying the other employee. In one of our first meetings, she explained that nearly everything that we were doing was wrong. Our forecasting was backwards, our buffer stock calculations were completely flawed, and our supplier relationships were structured poorly. Within 120 days, our stockouts disappeared. Within 12 months, we'd tripled revenue of the business, simply because we actually had products available to sell. Looking back, my cost savings with the cheaper manager likely cost me over $10 million in missed sales. That's when it all clicked for me. The $120 or so an hour wasn't an expense. It was the best investment I've ever made. And more importantly, I learned that sometimes the most valuable things an A player can do is tell you that your approach is completely wrong. There are 2 critical misconceptions about talent that hold back most entrepreneurs. I call these the 2 talent traps. Trap number 1 is believing that talent follows strategy. Most founders think that their job is to create the perfect strategy, then find people to execute it. This is backwards. The traditional model is that leadership creates the strategy, employees implement it. But with A players, that dynamic shifts dramatically. These people are experts in their domains, often more knowledgeable than you in their specific areas, especially if you're a first-time founder. When you hire true specialists, your job becomes setting the vision and objectives, then giving them autonomy to determine how to get there. They'll identify missed opportunities, flag risks that you haven't seen, and suggest approaches that you wouldn't have considered. The smartest thing you can do is listen. Let the talent tell you what to do, not the other way around. And then trap number 2 is viewing talent as a cost, not an investment. Most entrepreneurs look at salaries as expenses to minimize. That's short-sighted. The right people create multiples on their compensation, sometimes 5 times, 10 times or more. I've seen companies hire $200,000 a year CMOs who generated millions in additional revenue within just months. I've watched operations experts earning $120K save companies $300K annually by just optimizing their supply chain. When you view talent through an investment lens, the question changes from how little can I pay this person to what returns can this person generate? A players pay for themselves many times over. This created a complete mindset shift for me. I started asking, how can I attract people who are better than me at critical functions? Remember, A players want to work with other A players. Once you start building a team of exceptional people, it becomes self-reinforcing. Excellence attracts excellence. The hardest part for most founders is realizing that these people aren't working for you. You're creating an opportunity for them. They're giving you their incredibly valuable time and expertise. Your job is to make it worthwhile for them by creating an environment where they can do their best work, grow professionally, and be recognized for their contributions. When you avoid these 2 talent traps, hiring transforms from being a necessary business function to your most important growth lever. The difference between good and great in business often comes down to who's in your team. So the next thing that you need to learn in my hiring framework is know your archetypes. Before you start hiring anyone, you need to understand something fundamental about yourself, your entrepreneurial archetype. Are you a creative marketer, an operational mastermind? You might even be a product genius like Steve Jobs. I call this the founder force multiplier. The idea is simple. Identify what you're exceptionally good at and structure your early hiring to maximize that strength, not replace it. Here's the harsh truth. It took me years to learn. if you're a marketing founder with a talent for running ads and creating campaigns, you probably shouldn't hire someone to take over marketing until you're well past 1 million in revenue. Why? Because that's your superpower. That's how you're creating outsized returns in your business already. I see so many founders make this mistake. They think, I need to get this off my plate so I can focus on being a CEO. But if marketing is your zone of genius, replacing yourself too early is actually reducing the leverage in your business, not increasing it. Instead, hire for the low leverage tasks that drain your energy and prevent you from fully applying your superpower. If you're brilliant at marketing, but getting bogged down in customer service emails, that's where your first hire should be. I learned this lesson the hard way when my business hit about 1 million in revenue. I thought I need to graduate from doing the ads myself. I hired an okay media buyer, but definitely wasn't as good as me. Our ROAS dropped instantly. It took me 3 months to fix that mistake, and it wasn't even an expensive lesson. I even see this in kind of almost non-marketing orientated founders, like mums and dads that feel very uncomfortable in Facebook ads, and they take over the Facebook ads, and because they care so much, they still get outsized returns there because it's such a high leverage thing. You see, your archetype also determines your blind spots. If you're a creative founder, operations might be your weakness. If you're an operational guru, maybe product development, it might not be your strong suit. In short, here's how to apply the founder force multiplier. First, identify your zone of genius. What do you think you are better than 95% of people in your field? Step 2, keep doing that thing. Don't outsource your superpower. Third, hire for your blind spots. Get help in areas that you're weakest. Then hire for low leverage tasks, freeing yourself from things like customer service. Remember, in the early stages, sub 1 million, your personal strengths are your business's competitive advantage. Protect that advantage by hiring strategically around it, not replacing it prematurely. It's only when your personal involvement in your zone of genius in your business becomes a bottleneck should you consider bringing in someone to take it over. And even then, you'll want to hire someone exceptional, someone that is far better than you to exceed your standards. So let's move on to the blueprint of who to hire at each stage of your business, keeping this principle in mind. When you're in startup phase, generating under $1 million in revenue, your primary goal should be to stay as lean as possible while still getting some expert help. A common misconception is that hiring is too expensive at this stage. But what many entrepreneurs don't realize is that even with limited resources, you can still bring on exceptional talent through strategic fractional arrangements. Here's what I recommend for the sub 1 million phase. Now, keep in mind, this is for a founder that isn't marketing orientated. First, get a creative strategist, maybe 10 to 15 hours a week. This is arguably the most important role. They'll help you create compelling messaging and develop really great assets that convert. Remember, if you're already a creative person, you might not need this role, and you might want to hire an operations person to help with forecasting instead, most likely called an operations manager. Next, you want a paid social or paid search expert. Get one of these specialists for 10 to 15 hours weekly. You might want to separate the roles. Maybe a paid social, like a Facebook person, won't be your paid search person. And again, if you're an expert marketer, you can handle this yourself. Next, you want a graphic designer and video editors. These can definitely be kept offshore for now to keep costs low. Then you've got customer service. These can also be kept offshore to keep costs low. Even if it takes you just 20 minutes a day answering emails, answering tickets, get rid of this role because it's draining your energy. There's nothing worse than trying to do something creative, but then you have Karen really just grilling you over something that you didn't even do. The key here is to pair your creative strategist with your paid media experts to create a cohesive unit. Too often I see founders create silos where the creative team works separately from the media buyers. Instead, get them to collaborate directly with you leading the meeting, and you can get some incredible outsized returns. The beautiful thing is this entire setup might just cost you around $5,000 a month if structured correctly with freelancers and part-time specialists. Now, some people will tell you at this stage, you should do everything yourself. I can't say I fully agree or disagree. For some founders, depending on their skill set, that might be the right approach. What I know for sure is that the groundwork you lay here will support the 7 and 8 figure growth that you need to do. I see too many founders trying to do everything themselves, only to wake up one day with significant momentum and suddenly realize they can't scale because they have no support systems in place. Then they have to step back, figure out who to hire, and potentially lose precious momentum in the process. My recommendation, if you can't afford it, start building the team early. You'll thank yourself later. One last note before we move on to the next phase. If you're the founder, you're essentially the CMO at this stage. The more you understand about things like marketing, you'll be able to hire better people later on. You're positioned to understand who to hire. Now, Once you hit the 1 million mark and you're scaling towards 10 million, it's time to expand your team to bring on some key roles that'll help you manage your growth. In this phase, we're looking at expanding the roles from phase 1 while adding key new positions. This is your growth acceleration team. Now, it's worth noting that you're still under 10 million, so you might not be able to afford all of these roles, and you might bring these people on maybe at 15, 20 million as well. First, we've got a fractional head of growth or CMO. This person will manage your marketing strategy and help you buy back some of your time leading the marketing team. The second thing we'll do is we'll convert all of our top freelancers to part-time or full-time, starting with, let's say, your creative strategist, paid social expert, or some of your videographers. The difference in commitment and performance between freelance and full-time is substantial. Then we've got customer service manager and reps. We've already hired a rep early on, so we might want to hire a customer service manager to manage them. Many brands outsource customer service at the first opportunity, but the companies that bring this in-house early see incredible results. Then we've got an operations manager. They'll optimize your costs, find the best suppliers, and plan your inventory. Timing is super important here. Just make sure you bring them on when their salary can be offset by the savings they create. They can even manage your customer service team if you really need them to do more. Then we've got email marketers, maybe 10 hours a week. At this stage, retention starts to become more important. You might even consider someone full-time at the higher ends of the revenue bracket. Then we've got influencer or affiliate managers. They can share the title. This person will handle all of the seeding for your product, set up all of your affiliate codes. Then we've got our CRO specialist or our CRO team. These people can help build new funnels, set up a CRO program, optimize AOV. Sometimes your head of growth can actually handle these responsibilities in the early stages. Then finally, we've got the product team. This is highly dependent on your existing hero product and niche. If you're, let's say, in clothing, you need to keep releasing products using a designer or head of product. If you're not in an evergreen niche, let's say ice bars, you could use an agency to develop one-off products. At this stage, I recommend bringing in all the core functions into the house as quickly as possible, but not so fast that everything breaks. I did that exact mistake. You can use mentors to understand who you need to hire. Now, when you reach 8 figures and beyond, your organization needs more structure, but the foundation remains the same. In fact, phase 3 is mostly about doing more of what worked in phase 2, but with greater formality and scale and trackability. At this stage, you want to create formal departments with dedicated leaders. You might want to bring in a CMO, COO, even a CFO. However, truthfully, with a CFO, you might just want someone fractionally initially with a actual senior account leading the team. Now, let's talk about where to find these amazing people that will transform your business. The $1 million question, where do you find A players? There are 4 primary methods, but one stands out head and shoulders above the rest. The first is personal network. This is the cheapest, fastest, and most trusted way. Always trust, but verify with references. You can also post on your brand's social media to see if anyone that loves your brand is available. LinkedIn and job boards. Most people use LinkedIn ineffectively. I'll share my method in a moment. This is my favorite strategy. Then we have freelance marketplaces like Upwork, Fiverr, and specialized marketplaces, which are okay. Finally, something that most people don't do is run ads. You can set up ads as you, the founder, talking about the role that you're hiring and run it on really small budgets to a landing page. So here's the method that I found the most effective, which I use to find almost all of my A players. You see, A players aren't looking for jobs. I would babysit my A players' kids if they asked me to stop them leaving the company. This means that you have to go hunting. I call this the target and approach method. First, you need to identify target companies. Make a list of 20 to 30 companies that do what you're looking for exceptionally well. For example, if you need a Facebook media buyer and you're doing $1 million in sales, make a list of brands that are doing over 10 million in sales that do Facebook ads incredibly well. Next, you want to find the key people. You can use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is like $99 a month, to search for people who hold the relevant positions at those companies. Next, you want to send a low pressure outreach. Reach out to them with a simple message asking about their availability for freelance work or just to go get a coffee and chat about work. You don't want to offer them a job outright. Just go to look to understand what they're looking for. And then next, vet them properly. In the interview, ask about trends in their area of expertise to gauge their knowledge and thought process. But more importantly, just to see if it's a good fit. They might be super unhappy at their other role. Then what you can do is you can test with a paid project. Give them a small paid project before committing to an ongoing relationship. You'll be surprised at how effective this is, and then you can see how you both work together. Now, let's cover interviews, as this is where lots of people stuff up. Too many founders make decisions based on just a gut feeling after a couple of conversations. For important roles, you should be conducting at least 20 interviews. Why? Because pattern recognition is crucial. After you do enough interviews, you'll develop a talent radar, the ability to spot high performers quickly. I can now tell within 10 minutes whether someone has A player potential. I don't get it right every time, but I know if they have the potential. So you're probably wondering about how to conduct an interview. Here's my system inspired by the book Who, A Method for Hiring. It's a really good book. You should check it out. First, you want to define success before you start. Create a one-pager with specific outcomes the person needs to achieve, not just responsibilities. Instead of things like manage inventory, write maintain 98% in stock rate while keeping holding costs under 15%. Instead of create ads for Facebook, write build a framework to introduce at least 10 UGC ads a week while running ads at the optimal budgets. Like, get specific. Next, use chronological, structured questioning. Walk through their entire history systematically for each role. Ask things like, what were your exact responsibilities when you started? What were your biggest accomplishments? How do you measure success? What were some of your low points and failures? Who was your boss and how would they describe your performance? Why did you leave? Then you need to consider if you're interviewing a subject matter expert. When you're not an expert in the field, make sure you do your homework first. Research 3 to 5 technical questions that would be common knowledge for someone with their claimed expertise. You can use AI for this, but ideally you'd get a technical mentor to help you to ask for things that you don't know. Then when you're in the interview, ask them to explain complex concepts in simple terms. A players can make complicated ideas very accessible. They don't make it more complicated. Then you can present a real problem from your business and watch how they would approach solving it. This process often reveals more than the solution in just how they've described the solution. Then compare answers across candidates to identify patterns. Even if you don't understand all the technical details, this is where you could see someone that really kind of just stands out. And then consider bringing in a trusted advisor or consultant in that field just for one round of interviews, if it's really that important. Let's say you're doing a website migration, you might need a Shopify expert. Then finally, we have behavioral questions. These reveal a lot about the A player. Some questions could be, tell me about a time when you disagreed with your boss, but you knew you were right. What did you do? Then we have describe a situation where you identified a problem before anyone else noticed it. What's the biggest mistake you've made professionally and what did you learn from it? Give me an example of when you had to make a decision without all the information you needed. Tell me about a time you had to deliver bad news to a boss. Then finally, when have you improved a process that wasn't originally your responsibility? During these questions, make sure you're listening to the language that they're using and how they're using it. A players consistently use team words like we succeeded this when describing successes, and then they often take personal responsibility for failures, even when they are actually part of the team. You got to listen for accountability language and make sure that you don't hold them when they say what is their weakness. Don't hold that against them, because if they've identified their weakness, chances are it's not going to keep becoming a problem. One other approach that I really like is describe the day in the life. So you can ask them to walk me through your typical day at your last job, hour by hour. A players can be very detailed and specific about this, and that demonstrates mindfulness around where they spend their time. Now remember, once you identify an A player in an interview, the dynamic often shifts. They start interviewing you. Be prepared to sell them on the vision and the opportunity that you have. A players just have so many options. You need to win them over. One thing that I've always relied on and that has never really failed me is the single biggest predictor of success is how someone has performed doing similar work in similar situations. Not just education or their ability to answer, but have they actually already done the task that you need them to do? Another really good sign is, have they been at a company for a long period of time and gotten multiple promotions doing exactly what you need them to do? Now, to round this whole video up, a question I get all the time is, should I hire in-house, use an agency, or work with freelancers? The answer is, it depends on your stage, budget, and specific needs. Let's compare them all. Agencies. Pros: specialized knowledge and skills, access to other brands' knowledge, flexibility and termination, which helps testing new ideas. Cons: you can often be handed off to a junior junior can often be expensive, sometimes struggle to integrate with the wider company. Freelancers. Pros. They're often the most affordable option, highly flexible, accountable as sole responsible party. Cons. Can be difficult to vet, difficult to find, may lack specialized skills, limited availability, and sometimes take on too much work and not be responsive. And finally, in-house. Pros. Deep understanding of your brand, full integration with your company, builds internal knowledge. And cons, requires more management, may lack specialized skills compared to agency, can be expensive and hard to find. In my experience, the best approach for growing most e-commerce brands is to start with freelancers gradually, convert your top performers to in-house roles, and use agencies selectively for specialized projects. Why? Because freelancers give you flexibility while you figure out what you need. In-house teams build institutional knowledge, and agencies can fill specific gaps when needed. I've seen too many brands burn $7,000 a month on agency fees with nothing to show for it internally. When they want to make a change, they have to start from scratch because all the knowledge walked out of the door from the agency. Long term, it's almost always better to build in-house capabilities for your core functions. The companies that thrive at the highest level have strong internal teams that deeply understand their brand and customer. If this video is helpful, go check out our free compounding formula video on YouTube to learn how to take your business to 8 figures and beyond. It's on the screen.